In this lesson, I'm going to finalize the flat colors for the composition. I want to move through the foreground elements as well as the mountains in the background. So again, continuing the process and using the pen tool as much as possible. And then rasterizing, or, kind of converting that layer from a vector shape into a bitmap, into a normal painting layer. And the reason that I do that is just to ensure that I can paint on that layer later on. You can't actually paint directly onto a vector layer, so I always like to right click and convert it to a rasterized layer. In the foreground here, when it comes to creating the shape for this shield, I want to show you how I would approach it. And that is to grab the elliptical marquee tool, which is the second one down, hold shift on your keyboard, and that allows you to create a perfect circle. Then on a new layer, I'm going to fill that with a color, hit Command or Control T to skew it. So let me move it into place, and then I can manipulate the edges. I'm holding down Option or Alt on your keyboard. Now I want to actually duplicate the layer. So if you click onto the layer where that shape is and hit Command or Control plus J on your keyboard, that will duplicate the layer. So now I've got two of the exact same shapes. If you click into the little thumbnail icon of the layer, it will select that entire shape and click into there like that, maybe a bit darker. So now my top layer is this grey color, but if I click on the underneath layer, I'm going to nudge that layer out, and you can see that that's like a very quick and easy way to make a round 3D shape. So with my lasso tool, I'm going to come in and I'm sort of like drawing this again, but just using the lasso tool. So I'm going to draw it out, and then I'm going to hit backspace, which deletes that color, and that's from the top layer. Then I'm going to go to the underneath layer and kind of carve out like another sort of chink or another chunk that's kind of missing. And then with the lasso tool, I'm going to start to draw out the skull. Now the way that you can work with the lasso tool is while you're in the polygon lasso, if you hold down Option or Alt on your keyboard, you can toggle between that and the regular lasso, which means you can make straight lines as well as curved lines. And it's a really, really handy workflow. So I'm doing that to just sort of trace out the shape. And then I'm going to fill that with a color. And then for the horns, I'm going to switch over to the pen tool and make sure that I get those curves. These little items, again, going to use the lasso tool and trace them out. And I don't need to do anything too complicated. They can be quite stylized. Moving on to the right side, I had initially thought these were going to be, a fence, but I think I'm going to leave them as just generic sort of stakes in the ground, like, stakes of timber or something like that, and fill all of them with the same color. All right, so now what I'm going to do is try and tidy up my layers before I go any further. So I'm going to group that layer and I'm going to name it Right OL, and you can see I've named the left side Left OL. OL means, it's an animation term, it means overlay, and it's the term that's used for items that are going to essentially be overlaid on top of the animation. Remember how I mentioned in the previous video, when you're keeping your foreground distinct from your midground and your background, that's going to help the animators, or give the sort of freedom for the animators to have characters walking behind these foreground elements. So what I'm also doing here is once I've got everything grouped, I'm actually going to separate them out into these three distinct sections. So you can, this is a very good and very common practice as well. I'm going to make one large group for the foreground, the midground and the background, and then within each of those folders or subfolders